Here's the next chapter. The following days were filled with uncertainty and new possibilities. Karen found himself constantly thinking about the conversation he had had with Arav, replaying the words over and over in his head. Arav had been honest with him, vulnerable even, and it was something Karen wasn't used to. There was a part of him that wanted to step forward, to fully embrace whatever this was between them, but there was also a voice inside his head warning him to be careful. Arav had always been a mystery, a puzzle he'd never been able to solve. And now it seemed like the closer Karen got to figuring him out, the more complicated things became. Karen spent the next few days with his mind in a constant state of turmoil. His heart wanted forward, wanted to take that next step with Arav, but his mind was cautious. He couldn't help but wonder, what if it was all just a fleeting feeling? What if Arav was only caught up in the moment? The last thing Karen wanted was to get hurt, to be left standing in the ruins of something he thought was real. But Arav wasn't making it any easier. The texts, the subtle touches, the moments of quiet intensity between them, they all pulled Karen in deeper, making it harder to resist the pull. He had never felt like this before. Never had he felt so completely drawn to someone, so utterly consumed by the idea of being with them. And yet, the fear lingered. That evening, Arav invited Karen over to his apartment again. Karen had hesitated at first, unsure of what it would mean to step into that space again. But something inside him told him he needed to go. He needed to see Arav again, to figure out what was really happening between them. When Karen arrived, Arav was waiting for him at the door. His expression was calm, but there was an underlying tension in his eyes that Karen couldn't ignore. "Hey," Karen greeted him, his voice steady despite the butterflies in his stomach. "Hey," Arav replied, his smile warm but strained. He stepped aside to let Karen in. "I made dinner. Hope you're hungry." Karen smiled faintly, trying to push away the tension in the air. "I'm starving." They ate dinner together, the conversation light, even though the silence between them spoke volumes. Karen couldn't help but notice the way Arav kept glancing at him, as though he was waiting for Karen to say something, anything that would break the tension. Finally, after the meal, Arav led Karen to the living room. The dim lighting and soft music set a mood that was both comforting and intimate. Karen sank into the couch, his mind racing as Arav took a seat next to him. The proximity between them felt electric, charged with the weight of what they both knew was looming just beneath the surface. Karen couldn't take it anymore. He needed answers, needed to know where they stood. "I don't want to keep dancing around this," Karen said, his voice low but firm. "What is this between us, Arav? What are we doing?" Arav's gaze faltered for a moment, his eyes momentarily losing their sharpness. It was clear that he had been waiting for this question, but that didn't make it any easier to answer. "I don't know," Arav admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't have the answers, Karen, but I do know that I don't want to stop whatever this is between us. I can't stop thinking about you. I can't stop wanting you." The words hit Karen like a wave, crashing over him and leaving him breathless. He had been expecting an answer, but hearing Arav speak those words in that quiet, vulnerable tone made everything feel so much more real. But even then, a part of Karen held back. The fear that had been gnawing at him wouldn't go away. "What happens when the dust settles?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "When we're not caught up in the heat of the moment, when things calm down, what will we have left?" Arav looked at him, his eyes intense. "I don't know, Karen, but I want to find out. I want to figure it out with you." The room seemed to grow quieter in that moment, the air thick with unspoken words and emotions. Karen could feel the heat between them, the magnetic pull that neither of them seemed willing to resist. And in that moment, the fear that had been holding him back began to dissipate, replaced by something much stronger. He leaned in slowly, closing the distance between them. Arav didn't move away. In fact, he seemed to be waiting for Karen to make the first move, his eyes dark with desire and anticipation. When their lips finally met, it was like the world stopped. The kiss was slow at first, tentative, like they were both testing the waters, unsure of what would come next. But as the minutes stretched on, the kiss deepened, growing more urgent, more intense. The tension that had been building between them for days finally exploded in that moment, and Karen felt as though he was drowning in Arav's touch, in his kiss, in everything that they had both been holding back. When they finally pulled away, both of them were breathless, their faces flushed with the intensity of what had just happened. What now? Karan asked, his voice shaky but full of longing. Arav's smile was soft, almost sad. I don't know, but we'll figure it out together. Karan nodded, his heart beating wildly in his chest. He didn't have all the answers, and neither did Arav, but for the first time in a long time, he felt like maybe, just maybe, he didn't need them. Maybe all he needed was to trust in what they had, to trust in the way Arav made him feel. And with that, Karan took a deep breath, letting the moment wash over him, knowing that things between them were never going to be the same. The next morning, Karan woke up with a feeling of uncertainty hanging over him, like a heavy fog that wouldn't lift. He lay in his bed, staring up at the ceiling, the events of the previous night replaying in his mind over and over. The kiss, the closeness, the way Arav's lips had tasted like everything Karan had been denying himself. But now, as the morning sun filtered through his window, a million thoughts crowded his mind. Was this just a fleeting moment of passion, a lapse in judgment, or was it something deeper, something real? Karan wasn't sure what to believe, and he wasn't sure what to do next. His phone buzzed on the nightstand, snapping him out of his reverie. It was a text from Arav. Hey, good morning. I was thinking about last night. We need to talk. Karan felt a shiver run down his spine. Arav had been the one to pull away last night, to leave things unsaid, and now it seemed like he was the one wanting to open the conversation. Part of Karan wanted to bury his head in the sand, to avoid confronting the emotional whirlwind they'd created. But another part of him, the part that had been yearning for this connection, was desperate to know what Arav was thinking. He quickly typed a reply. Morning. I agree. Let me know when you're free. A few minutes passed before Arav responded. I'm free now. Come over? Karan hesitated for a moment. He wanted to see Arav again, to try and make sense of everything. But the weight of his own doubts held him back. He had no idea where this was going, but something deep inside him told him he needed to face it head on. He grabbed his jacket and headed out the door, making his way to Arav's apartment. The air was crisp and cool, a gentle breeze rustling the leaves in the trees as he walked. It was a beautiful morning, but Karan couldn't shake the tension that knotted in his chest. When he arrived at Arav's apartment, the door was already open, and Arav was standing in the hallway looking as calm and composed as always, but Karan could see the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes, the way he was trying to mask his own feelings. Hey, Karan said softly, stepping inside. Hey, Arav replied, giving him a small smile. Thanks for coming. They stood there for a moment, neither of them knowing how to begin. Finally, Karan broke the silence. So what do we do now? Arav sighed, running a hand through his hair. I don't know, Karan. I didn't expect any of this. I didn't expect to feel this way about you. I've never felt like this before, and it's confusing, and I'm scared. Karan's heart ached at Arav's words. There was a vulnerability in his voice, a rawness that made Karan's own fears feel insignificant. He took a step closer, his gaze softening. I'm scared too. I don't know what any of this means, but I don't want to walk away from it. I don't want to pretend like last night didn't happen. Arav looked at him, his eyes searching Karan's face as though trying to read him, trying to understand him. But what if this is all just a mistake? What if we're both just caught up in the moment? Karan shook his head, a small, tender smile tugging at the corner of his lips. I don't think it's a mistake. Maybe it's messy, maybe it's complicated, but it feels real. And I don't want to miss out on it because I'm too afraid to take a chance. Arav's expression softened, his defenses starting to crumble. He stepped closer to Karan, his hand gently brushing against his arm. The simple touch sent a jolt of electricity through Karan's body, reminding him of how close they were to something powerful, something dangerous, but something worth fighting for. I don't know what's going to happen between us. Karan, Arav murmured, his voice hushed. But I can't ignore how I feel. I don't want to hide it anymore. Karan's breath caught in his throat. He could feel his heart racing, his palms sweating as the moment between them stretched on. There was no going back now. Everything they had built, every unspoken word, every glance, they were all leading to this. He reached up, cupping Arav's face in his hands, and brought their lips together in a kiss that was slow and tender, yet full of unspoken promise. It wasn't like the frantic kiss from last night. No, this one was different. It was filled with understanding, with the quiet certainty that they were stepping into something that might change them forever. When they pulled away, neither of them said anything at first. They just stood there, staring at each other, their foreheads touching as they breathed in the same air. I don't want to rush this, Karan said quietly, his voice almost a whisper. I just want to take it one step at a time, see where it goes. Arav nodded, his eyes softening. Me too. No pressure, just us, figuring it out. And for the first time in what felt like forever, Karan felt like he had made the right decision. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing for certain. He didn't want to face it without Arav by his side. The days that followed were a blur of emotions, moments of clarity and moments of doubt. Karan and Arav continued to navigate the complicated landscape they had found themselves in. Their connection had grown stronger with each passing day, but so had the uncertainty of what exactly they were building. Despite their best efforts to take things slow, it was hard to ignore the pull between them. Every glance, every touch, every conversation seemed to add another layer to the deepening bond they shared. Yet they were both aware that this wasn't a simple path to walk. There were too many variables, too many unanswered questions. It was a sunny afternoon when Arav called Karan, his voice carrying a hint of something serious. Hey, can you come over? I need to talk to you about something. Karan felt a twinge of anxiety at Arav's tone. Of course. What's up? It's something important. I'll explain when you get here. It's nothing bad. Don't worry. Karan could tell Arav was trying to reassure him, but the weight in his voice made Karan even more curious. He grabbed his jacket and headed out the door, his thoughts racing. What could it be? What was so important that Arav wanted to talk about? When Karan arrived at Arav's apartment, he found Arav sitting on the couch, looking unusually distant. His eyes were focused on the window, and he seemed lost in thought. Karan sat down beside him, unsure of how to approach the situation. Arav, what's going on? You've got me worried. Arav took a deep breath, his hand rubbing the back of his neck as he turned to face Karan. I've been thinking about us, he began, his voice hesitant. I know we've been taking things slow, and I don't want to rush anything. But the truth is, I'm scared, Karan. Karan's heart pounded in his chest. He reached out, placing a hand on Arav's, trying to offer some comfort. Scared of what? Scared of how deep this is getting. Scared of how much I'm starting to care about you. And scared of how this could change everything. Karan felt a lump form in his throat. He had been feeling the same way, caught between the desire to dive headfirst into this new relationship and the fear of what it could mean for both of them. I get it, Karan whispered. I'm scared too. But I don't want to lose you. I don't want to walk away from this just because we're afraid of what could happen. Arav's gaze softened and he squeezed Karan's hand. I don't want to lose you either, but I think it's important that we're both on the same page. I need to know that we're in this together, that we're not just playing around with each other's feelings. Karan nodded, his mind racing. I promise, I'm not playing around with you, Arav. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. Arav looked into his eyes, searching for any sign of doubt, but there was none. He could see the honesty in Karan's gaze, and it made him want to believe in this, believe in them. I want to trust you, Arav said quietly. I want to believe that this is real, but I also need to be sure that we're not just getting caught up in the intensity of everything. Karan leaned in, his lips brushing against Arav's forehead. The soft gesture made Arav close his eyes, feeling the warmth of Karan's affection seep into his soul. I understand, and I'm not rushing anything. We'll take this one step at a time, no matter how complicated it gets. I'm in this for the long haul, Arav, and I'll be here for you, through all of it. Arav's heart skipped a beat at Karan's words. He didn't know what the future held, but in that moment, he felt a sense of peace wash over him. He wasn't alone in this anymore. They were in this together. For the next few days, they spent time together, enjoying each other's company in small ways. They took long walks in the park, shared quiet dinners, and spent lazy afternoons on Arav's couch, simply talking about everything and nothing. Their connection deepened, and so did the quiet longing that simmered beneath the surface. But as they grew closer, so did the doubts, the fears. Karan couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change, something he wasn't prepared for. It was late one evening when Arav finally broke the silence. Karan, he began, his voice unusually serious. There's something I need to tell you. Karan's heart skipped a beat. He turned to face Arav, his breath catching in his throat. What is it? Arav hesitated, his hands trembling slightly. There's someone from my past, someone I haven't been completely honest with you about. Karan's stomach twisted in knots. He had suspected there were things Arav wasn't saying, things he was keeping from him. But he hadn't expected it to be like this. Who is it? Karan asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Arav took a deep breath, meeting Karan's gaze. It's someone I was involved with before, and they've come back into my life, Karan. I don't know what this means, but I think you need to know. Karan felt his heart drop into his stomach. What are you saying, Arav? Are you still involved with them? Arav shook his head quickly. No, I ended things a long time ago. But they're back now, and I don't know what it means. I don't want to hurt you, Karan, but I think you deserve the truth. Karan felt his chest tighten. The fear, the uncertainty, it all came rushing back. He had never expected this, never thought that there could be someone else. But as Arav looked at him, his eyes pleading for understanding, Karan knew that this was just another challenge they would have to face together. It wasn't going to be easy, but maybe, just maybe, they could get through it. After all, their hearts were tangled now, and there was no going back. The tension in the room was palpable, hanging in the air like a storm ready to break. Karan's mind raced, a whirlwind of emotions swirling inside him. Anger, confusion, hurt, all competing for his attention as he tried to process Arav's confession. I never wanted to hurt you, Arav repeated softly, his voice full of regret. I just didn't know how to tell you this before. It's not like I was hiding it from you on purpose. Karan stood up abruptly, unable to sit still any longer. His eyes flickered between Arav and the ground, trying to steady his breath. Then why didn't you tell me sooner, Arav? Why wait until now? How did you like this part of the story? Do let me know in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe and support so that you can enjoy more interesting stories like this. See you in the next part. Until then, take care.